lounging, son.
All right, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name is Ryan. With me today, I got my homeboy Tony McMillen with me for a creator commentary on Atta Boy, dude, which is one of my favorite projects he's done. He's done a lot of dope shit, but I'm very excited to have you. We're gonna do more of these, but we're gonna start with this one first. So welcome back, dude.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks a lot. This is sort of the gateway drug for most people, I think. This is like either their first book of mine or their favorite. So makes sense, man. Let's start with this one.
Yeah, you can't tell, but this is oversized. I wish I had it. Probably should have brought a comic book. Or I guess I could do this. So that's to compare the size, even though it's upside down.
Way bigger than Booster Gold, like twice the size of Booster Gold.
Yeah. Hey, that's funny though. The color scheme. I didn't even intend for that. It's blue and yellow. It's the same shit. But yeah, so I'm very excited to go through this book with you, dude. This is a great project. I know you mentioned you have some stuff in the works going on with this. But I think did you release a smaller version of it too?
Yeah. So basically, the big version you got there sold out, and it was cool. And I made a profit, but I was like, this has cost a lot to print this thing and all this stuff. So I'll make a smaller, regular size version, which it sold out too. And then I printed some more, so I still have some regular versions of this left over. But the big one you got is kind of the baby. That's the one I love because it's so fun to do an oversized treasury sized book. I've always wanted to do one.
Yeah, no, it's a great product, dude. I love.
Yeah, opening on like a huge spread. Like this was actually my first inspiration was there's a Grant Morrison, Frank Quitely X-Men book. It's like the first issue they did, and it opens with like Wolverine destroying like a Sentinel in the background, and Cyclops is like, pretty sure you could stop doing that, and then it goes back to the rest of the story, and it opens like that, and I always thought that was a really fun kind of opening.
Yeah, that was a really good issue. I'm picturing the page right now.
You know what I'm saying.
Yeah, that was a great issue. Yeah.
And so I thought it'd be really fun because I want this book to be like an event. I was like, well, let's kind of start it weird. You have this like opening like flash of this big robot and all this color, and then it's real quiet. You just see Atta Boy falling, and you see like the life meter on the left, and kind of like hold people's hand and go, this is gonna be a little different. This is a video game instructional manual disguised as a comic book, and so we have to kind of tip people their toes into the pool so they kind of get it. And so then you go, oh, it's red, so maybe he must be dead then. And then it's like, oh, game over. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think the concept of this too was very unique. I mean, we didn't really talk too much about it, but yeah, it's a video game instruction manual.
Thanks. Yeah, and what's weird is like I've had this idea. It wasn't Atta Boy, just an idea of I loved like the old Zelda manual for the first game. And I love like all the old Nintendo games and a lot of the manuals. Like the artwork is really beautiful. And I actually think as an artifact, those manuals themselves are just really cool. As a kid, I used to pore over them, and so I was like, oh, it'd be cool to do a comic book sort of and that was sort of like the template or the frame, but I didn't have a story for it. And then my first big book, Lumen, was gonna be this, like it was gonna be a video game manual. And eventually I was like, this is my first comic. I can't just do some high concept thing. I got to figure out how to do a comic book. So I just kind of threw out the video game manual idea of it. And then eventually, I had this Atta Boy character I was sort of thinking about, like a Mega Man robot, Astro Boy kind of thing. And I was like, oh, this would be perfect for this. And then the final part was, I was thinking about the Mandela effect kind of thing. And people they remember, people across the world remember a certain event or a movie or something that never existed. And I was like, oh, it'd be really fun to have that angle in this, which is a video game that somebody remembers and no one else seems to remember. And then this guy's trying to make basically recreate the manual so he can talk about this game, and that became the final piece that was like the third heat I needed to make this book like actually kind of start happening.
Yeah, no, this is a great concept. So yeah, up here, the video game from when I was a kid that no one else seems to remember. Then you go into this.
Yeah, this is actually the illusionary game system. This is fun. To actually devise like what I thought a game console could look like. And I've embraced my triangle fetish. Like there's a lot of triangles in all of my characters. This is like maybe the height of it. It's like, oh my God, there's a lot of triangles here, man. But I was like, okay. And so everything's triangular in a way. And what's funny, I have she's almost 4. I have a 3-year-old daughter who loves this book, and she like kind of thinks it is a game. And so she'll like push the buttons and she goes, he's jumping, foosh, foosh. And that's great. Like that's a cool way to approach the story. Just enjoy it for the manual aspect.
Yeah, no, it is great, dude. Because like at first thought, you think like how are you going to make a comic book out of a video game manual? But you do it.
Yeah, it was tricky, but like this stuff was fun, and it was fun just design wise. Like I'm gonna do a 2-page spread. It's gonna be just real weird and intricate and stuff, and then still keep the story going. That was like the big challenge. And then I had to do like I love when they show the insides of robots or monsters or any weird anatomy. So I had to do like the Terminator robot body skeleton thing.
I also think it's funny that you mentioned your triangle fetish. Like I never really paid attention to that. You do have a lot of
Yeah, this is on
triangles.
it's on full display in this one. Like
Yeah.
I go in hard on the triangles. And Attaboy's design actually, if I'm remembering correctly, my character Lumen has a triangular helmet, and he was sort of like he was when I was drawing the Lumen character Esteban, it was sort of Spider-Man 2099 and Boba Fett, and eventually I started giving them a triangular head, and that became that look. And then I was trying to think of different looks for Esteban, and one I was doing a drawing, I did basically like his regular human face in his triangular helmet, but I removed the front piece, and I was like, oh, that's cool. It almost looks like a sort of a robot Mega Man guy, but he has a triangle head. And then that was like the seed that became the design of Atta Boy. So Atta Boy and Lumen are like they're brothers and they're mixed. And on the next page we see the pencils there.
Yeah.
What's cool about that is like I'm actually showing you kind of the first iterations of Atta Boy and how I kind of tweaked it. And I'm also kind of showing you how you draw his face. Like you draw the triangle first, and then you do and so the first version, which looks really crude and weird, that was like the initial drawing of Atta Boy. It's like the Simpsons, like Tracy Ullman show version of him, which is like just not on model. But you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I can see how this will mutate and become what I'm familiar with.
Yeah, I just love the right because it's very meta too, the way that you're approaching, like, oh, this game might never have existed. So I started drawing this instructional booklet to convince myself that it was real.
Yeah, and I think I did the right thing, but I was gonna like go full kayfabe and like this, like if I did interviews, like no, this is real. I believe in this. But I was like, there's already I already talked about this on social media before it came out. I talked about it when I was talking about Lumen. Like the breadcrumbs there, you can see I'm full of shit. So I was like, I'm just gonna talk about this like as is. Like this is an idea, a concept of this book.
Mhm.
Unless I am mistaken and I'm like there's another layer here and it but who knows. But yeah, and the red character, that's Scrapper. He's really fun. He's my Racer X of he's kind of like the cool rogue robot guy. That's my boy Scrapper.
I
And
just
there's
love your style, dude. Like I've talked to you about it before, but it like you've really developed something that's completely yours. Like doesn't look like anybody else, and I think that can be hard to do with people because so many people will want to be like, oh, I want to draw like this person, I want to draw like that person, and yours is like nobody else.
Oh, thank you. And it's
Yeah.
funny, it's happened organically, and but it when it really started becoming my style, it was right after I was really trying to become Jeffrey Allen Love, this illustrator who I love, and he had this really distinct style, and I kind of figured he had tutorial videos of how to do it, and I was like, oh, I think I could do this. And I was doing a really poor version of his stuff. I did it for a couple months, and eventually I was like, what am I doing? Like, I don't want to be like the second best Jeffrey Allen Love. I want to be like the best me. And then I quickly, it just kind of fell into place, and the styles evolved, but I start going on the path which would become my style. So thanks a lot. I mean, that means all my favorite artists are people who just super distinct. Like if you see a Mike Mignola bush or a tree, it's like that's how he does that, or a snake, or Frank Miller brick, it's like that's a Frank Miller brick. They're all like one of a kind. And so that's what I'm trying to do, is to develop a visual language, like an alphabet of my style. Also more
So
triangles on display too.
yeah.
And this stuff here, I'm really proud of these pages. Like Motherboard is like the basically she's the villain of the piece in a sense. And this sequence where Attaboy kind of loses his father, I was really I just had, when I started Attaboy, I just finished the first six issues of Serious Creatures, which is a really wordy book, really talky, a lot of word balloons, a lot of conversation. So I was really happy to do a book that I could do like 5 pages of no dialogue or any words, because I was like, I just want to do some action oriented storytelling, and this is like a good sequence for that.
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking that when I was reading this because I was like expecting more dialogue or more writing in the book
Right,
because I was reading Serious Creatures, or I think I had just finished it at that point. Or it was the most recent thing that I had
right.
read. Yeah, these are
And like
just phenomenal. Look at, I mean, just the way you have explosion.
Yeah, and like, this the truth is, like, my default setting is less words when it comes to comics.
Hmm.
Serious Creatures kind of had to be more conversational, but like this is with my first book, Lumen had a lot of like silent passages like this,
Right.
and so it was a nice like breath of fresh air to kind of go back to this, and like just let the visuals tell the story. And so like I think looking at this, you can see like, oh, his dad's fucking zapped, he's sad, he's terrified, he's angry. It all kind of reads, and my kid can tell like his emotion, so I know it's working on that level.
Yeah, no, these are some great pages, dude. I love your coloring
Thanks.
too.
Yeah, it's funny. I love coloring stuff. I have friends who do comics, and they're coloring's the most boring part. And I'm like, that doesn't have to be. Like, you can yeah, you have a character, and he's, if it's a superhero, he's probably wearing the same thing every page, so it's the same color. But you can change things emotionally with colors. You don't have to color things just because the room is blue in that one panel. Maybe he's angry, so everything turns red now, or whatever. You can paint or color emotionally, and that's what I try to do.
Yeah, and that's definitely on display here. But I like it, like even in like serious creatures, like that the coloring in there is fucking so good.
Oh, thanks
I'm
a lot.
excited for that new issue.
It's gonna be a doozy, and then the one I'm working on now is gonna it's gonna break your heart. It's gonna be good. But yeah, and this stuff is like, I love like Mega Man, and I love just little robot kids for some reason. I think they're always fun to draw. So getting to do him in some action, and it's fun. The Zat sound effect. This is like no big deal, but like I was like gonna do like Zap because it's like a laser gun, and then I was looking online for different sound effects, and I found this Star Wars manga, and the stormtroopers, their gun said Zat, and I was like, oh, that's way cool. I'll do Zat, and now I've for a Grape Shot, a book I did later on, and the guy had like a gun, instead of blam, I was like blat. And I was like, oh, blat sounds like an Uzi, anyways. And so I'm like, okay, so sound effects of a hard T are going to be my new trademark. Like every sound effect that's like a gun, zat, blat, splat, whatever, they're all going to be T's. I think now that's the new move. And this is cool. This is my Sin City like kind of page, and there's a little tweak on around his eyes. There's a little color. It's almost like a digital kind of ghostly color coming off. I thought that was really fun.
Yeah, kind of like glitchy a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's what it was. It was, I used a Procreate effect called glitch, and I just kind of tweaked it just a little bit to give it a little taste. And this is fun. This page, which is Scrapper on his little like hover triangle, which it's we're gonna say it a million times, a lot of triangles. But what was fun about this page is like I took off the panel borders, and so it's become these blocks of color. And my kid, when she reads this with me, she actually puts her finger and goes woo woo, and just flies around the little trail it makes. And I like that. It's a nice moment of levity too, because Atta Boy just got his ass handed to him, and his dad's dead, and he fell off a tower. It's a real dark moment, but then you have a little light, kind of graceful moment with Scrapper.
Is this all digital like watercolor effect?
The coloring, yeah, the color. So I draw, actual ink on paper, but all the color in the watercolor is digital watercolor.
That's
And
crazy.
yeah, and I really try to make it look as analog as possible. And like part of the reason, like I'm not. I think I might be confident now to try some real watercolor again. But the ink pen I use, the ink that comes with it, is actually not waterproof, and so I've kind of reconfigured them, use different inks to make them waterproof, but it's a hassle. And also coloring, if you do it digitally, if you don't like what you did, you could just do it again.
Hmm.
So that's the big reason I haven't gone regular color all the way yet, but I think I'm building up to it.
I feel like my wife, when she's done it, will throw the color down first and then
Yeah,
do the stuff on top. Because like yeah, she when she was first getting into watercolor, like it was a completely different thing than like acrylic, right? Like you don't
right,
really have as much control over the way it bleeds on the paper, stuff like that.
right.
But yeah, it's crazy because like it looks, I didn't even know you could do that kind of effect digitally. I thought it was like a mix of digital color, and then I thought you threw down some regular watercolor on
That's
the
way too
board.
much work. That's way too much work, man. These are just colorful.
Yeah.
Uh, no, it's basically I saw like in Serious Creatures I start using watercolor, digital watercolor, and I really liked how it looked with like crayon, digital crayon tools too. And so I used everything from that for this book too. And this is really when I figured out how I like to color things, I think. And of course, the next page is nice and stark white and kind of breaks it up again. And you have a little like kind of resting attaboy. And this also kind of shows the reader like, okay, these little triangle things, his meter's all red, but then it becomes yellow. So it's like it's back to the video game kind of motif.
That looks like a Kirby hand like coming at you.
Oh yeah,
Like,
and the next page is actually a full on Kirby swipe.
yeah.
So this is from Captain Victory, issue 3 or 5 or some odd issue. But anyways, this great 2 page spread of he has these insectoid bad guys who are jumping in the air like that, and I was like, oh, I'm totally taking that. I love that. And so this is like a gas to draw. So I draw this, this is 2 pages taped on the back, and they're 11 by 17 pages. So this thing was just massive. I love
You don't hear many people saying they're referencing Captain Victory. I have to
it.
say, I really like that that's the Kirby that you're referencing because nobody talks about that book. I didn't even know that book existed up until what during the pandemic, and I've
Well,
tried to scoop up everything I could.
Well, it's funny. I didn't really know it existed until like maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And then a buddy of mine, Mike Burke, who works at a comic book shop, he's like, "Oh, I'll give you those issues." And he got me every single issue. He just gave it to me. Like I was like, "Holy shit." And it was incredible. And what's really cool about that, like it's a really fun story and it's later day Kirby. So there's some art which is not his peak per se, but some art is, I think, just incredible. But
Mhm.
story wise, it actually ties into the New Gods too. So if you're a New Gods head, it's like, oh, he's this Captain Victory is related to Orion, and it's all part of his giant cosmic tapestry. So I totally recommend it.
Yeah, it's the Kirby verse, dude. I love that
Yeah.
he connects everything that he's done.
Yeah, I love that he's the bridge between Marvel and DC. Like cosmically, he is his characters that all connect together. So it is the Kirby.
Yeah, because
Most
New Gods was supposed to be like the next iteration from Thor, right? I
right,
believe.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, totally. So like basically the first page of New Gods is like the old gods died, and that was, and it shows Ragnarok. It shows like all the characters on the dying, and there's a character in the background. It might be Thor. It looks like on the first page of New Gods. It's supposed to be, so it's like it's directly right there. It's kind of cool. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. And this is fun. Like so, this is back to the video game thing. I when I was doing I was like, oh, I'll do like a register your name thing. I was like, well, I got to do the ass thing because that's like every kid in the world. Like,
Yes.
and like I used to love that. I would play like a RPG or whatever, and when someone would talk to you in the town, and my name would be ass or butt slut or something really terrible, and they'd be all ass, I need your help. And I just giggle. And it would always be funny. And like my mom would come and be like, that's so stupid. I'm like, it's just I'm having fun. I love it. So I was like, I'm gonna do that. That's like the lowest brow part of this whole book, but I had to include that.
Yeah. I mean, what kid didn't do this? Like if you didn't, I mean, like you're not
Yeah.
enjoying your life at
No,
that
yeah,
point.
no, totally, exactly.
Yeah.
And this is cool too. This kind of shows like a quick part of the video game, but it also kind of it tips you off to like this book itself is kind of like this game where there's things about it which you might not understand the first time through. You gotta be patient, and the book will kind of reveal itself to you, like this little platform thing is.
Mhm.
And this is cool to do. It was sort of like a little tedious to draw in a bit because the panels are so samey. But I had the clouds move a little bit and kind of keep it fresh for myself, and it pays off when you finally read the whole thing.
Yeah, that's crazy. You redrew none of them
Yeah,
are the same.
no, so and like I was gonna kind of cheat it, and I was like, it's actually almost just as much energy to like trace this over and over again or whatever. I'll just draw it again, and it worked out. It's funny. Every book has like some sequence like this where I'm like, oh man, I gotta just redraw something a million times, and it's like it's fine. That'll be a week, and then you're fine, or it'll be 2 days or whatever. This is cool. So these are all the items and stuff, and like I have a couple like this is for my longtime reader. So there's like on the little circles in front of the Atta Boy on the right page, there's a little apple owl symbol, and there's a little triangular shark, which is a mysterious creature. So it's sort of like maybe he has some power ups which are themed from my other books. And what's fun about the other page, which shows his different power ups, like he if he gets the red one, he gets really fast, like the Flash.
Mhm.
The blue one was supposed to be ice. I was like, you know, part of the reason why he's colored yellow and blue is like, you can't just do him blue because that's Mega Man. Like, you gotta change it up a little bit. And he's triangular and he's different looking. But when I do him blue, I'm like, oh, like you definitely see that he's a little Mega Man like esque character.
Yeah, I always Mega Man was always one of my favorite games too. So like he'd get his new abilities or whatever from each villain he would take, and so
And he changes color scheme. I always love that.
is this like a Wolverine homage?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. And I think there's another page down the way where Scrapper's in a very similar pose, and you can see the Wolverine even more because he's got a face mask, which kind of like Wolverine covers his nose and his eyes and stuff. But yeah, that's exactly what that is. This is cool. So this is my Jesse Lonergan tribute page or tribute splash. Basically, Jesse's book Hedra is a great comic, and he does a every page is kind of a grid, and he has different grids, but they're all mostly like a 5 panel grid, and he'll use little tricks where he'll every once in a while a bigger panel. And so I saw him doing this kind of grid. I was like, oh, that'd be really cool for like the opponents list, and like you see in a video game manual. So this is Motherboard's Mechazoid Menagerie, and these are all these crazy villains. And I am like a sucker for puns. Like even before I was a dad, I was all about the dad joke life, and this is full of that stuff. There's like Krabicus, there's Ocelbot, there's Chainmailer Daemon, and actually on the top right the top left the left page on the top right, there's a Behemoth, and she's actually a character I'm going to be using in new books, and so I did a robot version of her. But it was just fun, and what's cool about these characters too, I could draw them as weird as I wanted to, because like they're not, most of them don't reappear in the book, so it's no big deal to like just do weird designs. I didn't have to worry about drawing that again.
Yeah, Control Alt Delete. It's a
Yeah,
good one. That's
I kind of stole it from the Deftones have a song. It's called like Command Control, and it's spelled like computer thing. I was like, oh, that's cool, yeah, because it sounds like weird, like it lends itself to some sort of like name or something like that. So I tried that. Then there's Phillips, the last one, and I think I just ran out of ideas.
Oh yeah, I see this. Yeah, definitely
Yeah,
a Wolverine right there.
and I am really proud of the top panel. He's coming down the triangle. I think it kind of it works. You could sell like he's flying down. And so Scrappers was a fun character. He, in a lot of ways, he's not the main character of the book, but he's almost like he's definitely the co-star. He's almost as important as Atta Boy himself. And this is them tussling, and Scrapper's kind of laid on the law, and Scrapper's sort of the guide to Atta Boy, and he outmatches Atta Boy, and it was fun to do a nice fight.
Oh, this is a great one right here. This panel.
Oh, thanks. Again, it was fun to draw these dudes just smashing each other a bunch. And then I was thinking about, I was like, oh, so he's going to take his mask off. What's Scrapper going to look like exactly? And I had a couple ideas. I wasn't sure how grotesque to make him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you see the flip,
Yeah, I just want to say this too.
oh,
I like the way that you have Atta Boy right there with the speed lines. That's pretty. That's a pretty dope.
yeah, thanks. That was, there's a bunch of things like that, which just kind of, I wasn't planning on it exactly, but I started drawing. I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if I did this. And I was really happy with how it turned out,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Oh,
and then
nice.
yeah, so I was like, okay, so I was like, his mouth is already exposed, so that will be mostly fine. But then I'll show his face is junked up, and it's, I think it's cool because like it's devastating, but it's also like it's not so gross that like it takes you out of the book, like, oh god, there's like flesh hanging off him, that's or meat or whatever. It's like, he's a cyborg or whatever. But the whole point of this is like this book is a lot about masks. Masks are used as like a metaphor, and masks are used just to explore identity. And I did that with Serious Creatures too, but this book has a lot of that. And so this is Scrapper kind of talking about Atta Boy. He's like, what you have on your face, that isn't really the real you. You're a cyborg like me, like
Mm-hmm.
deep down. And this kind of plays on that. And so the next page is stage select. I love this one. Like Mega Man's one of the games has great stage select. I love seeing different little lands, little icons, and also get to play with more weird puns and weird things like that. So there's like Digital Desert, there's all kinds of stuff. The Graveyard of Tomorrow is my favorite one. But it was just kind of another page which kind of shows the reader, this is a different kind of comic. It's still a guide to a video game in a way.
Mm-hmm. Mecha Mountains Majesties. I like that one.
Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
pretty happy with that too.
Ah, look at this.
Yeah, this is cool. My daughter calls the big blue one Cookie Monster robot because he kind of basically is. But then, yeah, this is just crazy fun to draw. Like it's 2 page spread. It's humongous, and what's fun about this book is like it gets to be kind of an art book too, in that sometimes it just cuts to a random adventure that you don't really have to follow any more than just this splash page, and it goes back to the main story. So it was really freeing. Like I get that just kind of, if I felt like drawing something cool and action oriented, I did that, and then I go back to the main story after that. And
Yeah, it's cool too
works.
because the scope of it, because this is 3 different zones, right? Like three
Right,
different levels. You see him
right.
really tiny here, close up here, and then just tiny here, just shooting like to see how small he is against this,
Yeah,
Cookie Monster robot.
thanks. Yeah, I was hoping that people will kind of get that. Like, I don't know. This book, I wanted it to be like. I remember when Tarantino dropped Kill Bill Volume One, he's like, "Yeah, Jackie Brown was my kind of quiet, like mature book, but now I gotta remind people like I can do rock and roll." And I always thought that was a cool way to say that. And I was like, "This." So Serious Creatures was my sort of more mature work, and then I was like, "Oh, now I'm gonna come back. I just want to like knock your socks off," and especially when it's an oversized book, I was like, "Let's do this," like let's go crazy.
Oh yeah. It's funny, no, not a lot of people talk about Jackie Brown, but that's like one of my favorite Tarantino movies. I think it's like maybe for me kind of top two. I love that movie.
Yeah, the movie's great. It's like it's funny. He kind of only he hasn't really revisited that energy until maybe Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he is now an older, more mature guy. But in
Mm-hmm.
Jackie Brown, he gave you almost a hint of like, yeah, I can do things which are more a little more laid back, a little more just mood pieces. When
Mm-hmm.
Jackie Brown is good. I remember as a kid, I liked it, but I was a little disappointed because it wasn't Pulp Fiction, it wasn't Reservoir Dogs. But
Sure.
but as I got older, I kept on going, oh man, I love Jackie Brown. I love watching Pam Grier just kind of twisting and grifting all these people, and it's great.
Yeah, the way they maneuver around each other in
Yeah.
there, and there's just so many different plates spinning to where like I remember when I watched it, I couldn't have guessed
Oh
where it
no.
was gonna go.
And that's Elmore Leonard. That's the novel it's based on. That's
Yeah.
his style. That was my introduction to him, really. And then Be Cool, and then I read some of his books actually. This is cool. This
Yeah.
is like a different like a stage map, and this is sort of based on Nintendo Power. Used to have these great like 2-page splashes of video a level guide, and like they do like Ninja Gaiden or Mega Man or whatever, and they just do screenshots would become a big map. And I wanted to do one of those.
Yeah, this is dope. I mean, just even like putting little details like this, like the double jump and shoot, the different moves, like having to remember those as a kid, or if like you go to the arcade for like Street Fighter or Marvel versus Capcom, try to remember the different combos.
I knew kids who like they didn't know their mom's birthday, but they remembered how to do fatalities, and I'm like, and I respected that. I was like, yeah, dude, that's priorities.
Yes.
Shatterhorn, this guy's cool. So what's fun about this for me is I originally included this image minus Atta Boy at the bottom in an art book called Fairweather Fiends. I've done a couple art books, super limited, like 25 copies. I sell them to people who want them. And this is one of the guys, and I was like, oh, he's like kind of Attaboy flavor when I was making Attaboy. So I drew a little Attaboy at the bottom, and I had Attaboy say "bip," which is kind of Esteban from Lumen's like catchphrase. And I just wanted to kind of further, I don't know, kind of merge those guys a little bit, like their worlds.
Hmm.
So this, and I wanted to do a nice kind of vertical 2-pager, and on the big version like you have right now, I think it's really impressive and cool.
Yeah, I love when books do this where you flip it around and stuff like that and get those like big ass. Especially because you're looking at the scope again, like to see him
Yeah,
so tiny. I love when stuff happens like that in comics.
yeah, exactly. I'm trying to sell the scale of it, and I love that. And it's also very Image Comics, early '90s, and that's where I grew up from.
Yeah.
This is really fun to do. I was pretty happy with on the right page when Attaboy's sort of jumping and flipping and he's real tiny,
Mhm.
and
Way
Trundle
over
the
here.
big hand. Yeah, I was happy with how it turned out. I was like, it's kind of animation style, and it's kind of fun to do sort of the choreography of it. And this is just more like the story wise, what you're getting is Scrapper is giving Attaboy tips and stuff like that, how to beat adversaries, and you get the idea that Scrapper has been around for a while. He's been in this world, he's seen some stuff, he's older and wiser than Attaboy.
Yeah, it is. I mean, yeah, like beware Trundle's sticky fingers when he hangs upside down, his eyes at his most vulnerable. Yeah.
And then we go back to like this is kind of interesting. I think there's a monument of Dr. Atta, who's Attaboy's father, and the statue gets and it's actually a statue of him and Attaboy together, being happy, and the statue gets blown up by some robots, and Attaboy is like devastated, and he's really upset, and you get kind of like you back to like the heart of the story. It's like Attaboy wants vengeance for his father who was killed by Motherboard and her robots, and then in the flip page, you get Scrapper again, and now Scrapper kind of lays down some real wisdom. He's talking about how Dr. Atta treated everyone like machines, maybe except for you, but why would they honor him? Why wouldn't they be upset with him? And Attaboy's not ready to hear this yet, and so this is kind of we're getting to sort of the juicy part of the story emotionally, I think. And so this is Scrapper takes off Attaboy's faceplate, and
I did.
yeah, and this is directly a riff on Machine Man, which is a cool Kirby book. And there's a part in Machine Man where his a faceplate looks more humanoid, and it gets removed from him, and he's like, "Give me back my face," He and Machine Man's character is repulsed by his own cybernetic nature. He doesn't like being a machine, and Attaboy's just like that. And so this is Scrapper kind of he's trying to make Attaboy realize that he's just as a machine as much as anyone else is, and if that means they're all machines, then no one's really a machine. They're all living creatures in a way, and maybe Dr. Atta didn't treat them justly. And so this, it's hard for Attaboy to understand that. And I think that's and then the third layer of this is the guy who's narrating this book is talking about his parents, their divorce, and he's talking about maybe he blamed his mom for making his dad kind of go away. And so it's starting to play like these three different levels, I think. At least I'm trying to. And I think it's satisfying for a reader who's getting all the levels. Like, okay, there's a lot of moving parts here, but it's all kind of working towards the same thing.
Yeah, and I think that's evident in all of your work. Like there's multiple layers, like they definitely benefit from multiple readings. Like you can pick a little bit different stuff each time you're reading it. And the power in these pages too. Like I can hear the yelling, like how much emotion is in this. Don't take my face, and he's screaming and stuff. And
Oh,
like this is your mask. You feel free to keep wearing it, so he's like masking who his true self is.
thanks. And also, good point. Like, I didn't think about this. This is my first book where I actually hand lettered it. Like before that, I was using a font which is based on my own handwriting. But this is the first book where I will hand letter digitally. I'll use an iPad and a stylus, but I'm actually writing each letter down. And so like when it says face there, I get a lot more expressive with the writing, and I started to embrace that. I was like, oh, now I can really write emotionally. It's like when you're writing a note to somebody and you're actually upset or happy. It
And you're
kind of
just
comes
like
out.
this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that's coming out. And I think I've become a better hand letter since this book, but this is the beginning of it. I'm really happy about that.
I love when stuff's hand lettered too. That's something I enjoy because, like you said, like it's just a different experience as opposed to something that's. And I'm not trying to take anything away from other lettering, but I love hand lettering.
Yeah, it makes a difference. And I read things which aren't hand lettered, and they're fine. But
Yeah.
you can tell it's a nice little extra layer.
Hmm.
And so this is cool. This is Attaboy's going to go up to Motherboard's pyramid. And so I wanted to kind of a slightly creepy, weird sequence where there's a lot of eyes watching him in the darkness, but they let him go up there. And this is my inspiration was I love Apocalypse Now. And I love
Yes.
in that movie when at the end when he's gonna go up to Colonel Kurtz and kill him, he sneaks in, but people are kind of letting him go. And once he chops his head off, they just let him descend they don't try to stop him because they kind of want him to kill Colonel Kurtz in a weird way. They want him to do that. And it's kind of creepier because these are his like acolytes. So in this book, it's sort of like these creatures want Attaboy to confront Motherboard because they kind of sense that this is what has to happen. It's weird. It's really weird.
Yeah.
But I like that kind of mood. Here we go. Here's a big Motherboard,
Yes.
yeah, display. So this I wanted this to be like, she's humongous, and I wanted to show that. And I also really like the idea of using her sort of weird triangular cape as the frames of the panels.
Hmm.
And you get a little glimpse in like the second panel when her mask breaks a little bit. She has a human eye underneath that. And that's because I think at this point, Attaboy's already talked to Scrapper and he realizes that maybe Motherboard, his mother, isn't really the villain he thinks she is, even though she destroyed his father. And I think that's starting to come through. And also, this is a nice design thing. I give Motherboard her own like life meter, and I found a way to incorporate her M, and then it
Yeah.
has like three triangles. And I love dorky stuff like that. If I could do that, I think that's super cool.
Oh yeah. No, this is a great sequence of panels inside the cave. I love
Thanks.
how and the coloring is all different, like different.
Yeah, to break it up because yeah,
Yeah.
if you don't, it gets a little hard to read. This whole book is sort of like how far can I take this until it's like unreadable, but still look super cool and badass. And that was kind of like the challenge. And then this is kind of like it's Attaboy wins, but it becomes a dark ending. He's basically enslaved all these robots, and he's realizing that like Motherboard, they are like him. They are robots, but that doesn't mean they are just machines that. And so it's kind of a dark ending. And that pose him on the chair, it's like loosely based on the end of the Conan movie when he's like King Conan on the throne.
Hmm.
He looks because like that's the end of the movie, and I always thought he doesn't look happy. He looks old and kind of like almost evil now. Like people on thrones in general, it's hard to make them look like good people. It
Yeah.
seems like people on thrones kind of. I mean, I'm just like too American. As I think kings are bad. I'm like, I don't know. This seems like a bad call. And so the game continues, and so the narrator is talking about he wasn't satisfied at the ending, so he kept on playing the game, trying to see if he could make things different. And he kind of this is cool. It's like a speed run where he goes through the game really fast, and you see like he goes back to the pyramid, he beats her again, he enslaves everybody, and it's like this is not working for him. And
Hmm.
then it cuts to him talking to Scrapper, and he says like Scrapper is the only thing that is different in this game. He has new responses, he says different things to you, and Scrapper's trying to hint at him like maybe there's more to this, and you got to keep on going. And this whole thing, him on the cliff, this is based on the tarot card, the Fool, who the fool's always on the precipice and he's ready to fall down. And the fool's it's supposed to be like the card that represents like you starting a new journey, a new part of your life. I always thought it was beautiful imagery. And so I kind of used that. And so this is when the narrator basically just gives up on the game. He's just going to keep on jumping off the cliff and just like, and I've done it. I've been so pissed at video games where I'm just going to kill myself a bunch of times. Instead of just turning the game off and going outside to play, I'm like, I'm gonna prove to this game how upset I am, like destroying myself. It's really funny and ridiculous, but I've done that. And
I've
that's
done it too. Yeah.
yeah.
You
I
get
have a
frustrated. Yeah.
oh yeah, I have a memory of like my mom renting like Mega Man 3 or something from a Blockbuster, and I'm playing it. I'm really frustrated. I can't beat something, and she comes in and she could tell I'm like swearing and screaming. I'm like 7 years old, and she's like, "We're not playing this anymore." I was like, "No!" I'm like crying, and she's like, "Clearly, we're not playing this anymore. You can't handle this. You got to go outside. You just got to chill." So this is that part of the book.
Yeah. I'm a lot of memories are coming back into my mind of that happening. Mostly it was the star levels on Super
Those are
Mario World.
yeah, those are incredibly hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is Atta Boy falling down again, and then finally, like at the beginning of the book, you have a quick glimpse of this where he's on a tower and he puts his hand down, and there's another Atta Boy's face, and then this is the Golgotha of Dead Boy robots. This is this huge tower of all of the Atta Boys which have fallen down that hole and then smashed over and over again. This is him standing on top of that, and now Scrapper comes down and goes like, "Hey, guess what? You're getting somewhere." And he kills him again and goes, "We got to keep doing this over and over again." And you're not sure why yet, but this is a funny kind of thing where Scrapper's just killing him, and Attaboy's kind of like, okay, I get it, but can you just? And he keeps on shooting him and shooting him, and finally Attaboy's kind of like traumatized. He's like, "Okay, I think we got enough." He's like, "Enough for what?" He's like, "Spare parts." And so now, which this is really weird because like I remember when I was making the book, I wasn't exactly sure how Attaboy is gonna where it was going to go, and then eventually it kind of dawned on me, oh, you make a rocket out of all their broken parts. I was like, that's really kind of morbid, but it's kind of
Hmm.
funny too, and kind of there's a cool metaphor to that too. And so that's what happens. Scrapper and Attaboy make a rocket out of all the broken parts, and then there's I think one of the nice moments of the book is when Scrapper hugs him and he tells
Is it right here?
Attaboy, yeah,
Yeah.
and instead of saying Attaboy, he says that a boy.
Yeah.
And you essentially get Scrapper is an attaboy. And so this is a really weird moment where it's like someone kind of embracing themselves and telling themselves they're proud of themselves, even though they are different. It's really weird. But then it's back to the adventure. So now the Foosh rocket goes up. This is crazy to draw. I actually like I'm impressed with this because I'm like, I don't remember. This is a lot of work. I can remember just redrawing this grid and trying to figure it out. And because basically I drew this grid down and it wasn't exactly right. And once I finished inking it, I was like, this isn't right. And so I just kept on redrawing it and moving it around and making this grid. And finally the grid, I was like, this is it. And then I had to redraw. I made the thing in the center was this weird cube thing. I did like I don't know 30 of these different variations of the script, dragging my pen around these weird like puzzle boxes that look like they're from Hellraiser. I did that over and over again, and like it was like I don't know like a whole night. And I remember like when I left my table, I was like, if someone saw these, like found these, they would think I'm a fucking maniac. Like The Shining. It's because they're just so weird. And I eventually picked one I liked and I put that in the center of the grid. And then you see Atta Boy kind of he goes through the rocket and he goes through these different levels. And what's cool, he changes size and shape, and he kind of goes in and out of these different dimensions. And it was really fun to do that and kind of do a 2001 like psychedelic sequence to
Hmm.
kind of show the reader that we're in a new kind of level, a new like realm. And so now it's all black and white too.
Yeah, these are two, like, I love this is probably one of my favorite spreads of the book because it's so crazy, like where it's drawing your eye. Like you're getting pulled into the center, but at the same time, you're like going, it's almost like your eyes are weaving in and out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was hoping for. Yeah, it's pretty nuts. And then we go into like whatever this thing is, and Attaboy's exploring it, and it's
It's
really
such a great
weird.
page.
Oh, thanks. That was one of my favorite drawings. I liked how big his fists look, and it's kind of got a Kirby thing going, and this is sort of a little bit more like that Apocalypse Now thing. There's this weird staircase he's kind of descending, and it's funny. Like, Apocalypse Now is something that's like I watched it when I was really young, like too young, and it's always been in the back of my head. There's like this something about the ending of that movie that really gets me.
Yeah, it's a great film.
And now we have Motherboard, and so this is when Attaboy, you know, he takes his own faceplate off. He's like, I get it, I'm like you, I don't mean any harm. And she takes off her mask and she reveals a human face, and they had the big talk. And and what's cool about this is a kid talking to their mother, going, I get why you had to leave dad. I get that. I get that. I'm sorry I was so bad to you. And she's like, I'm sorry too. I was trying my best. And the character starts getting bigger and bigger because at first he's really tiny. And eventually he comments on it. He's like, are you shrinking? And she goes, no, you're getting bigger. It means he's growing. He's literally growing as a person.
Hmm.
And I think that was a cool way to do that. And
Yes.
I and I also I like drawing Motherboard with an actual human face. She looks like now she looks like a Kirby character to me with a weird headdress and stuff.
Yes. Kind of looks like Hella a little bit.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we had the full family reunion. And then the big thing here is like, initially Attaboy embraces Dr. Atta and he's super happy. His dad's back, but then he remembers that, his dad was pretty crummy to his mom. And the big line is like, how could you treat mother like a machine? And the dad's like, I was wrong. You're right. I didn't try the best I could. And that's the difference. Mom, wasn't perfect, but she did try the best she could. And dad wasn't perfect, but he didn't try the best he could. And that's kind of the big takeaway from Attaboy. But then the book gets even weirder when now it's like we're kind of break the story down even more. And so these characters who are his parents kind of become symbols. And this is like the real like I was like, all right, I hope people are okay with let's go real crazy with this. It's just kind of talking about birth and life and death and and just kind of symbols themselves and what they could mean. And it gets almost spiritual. And then Attaboy's he starts talking to something else, which is called the other board. And it says, remember your true face. And so this is like another version of if Scrapper is Attaboy and Attaboy is a version of, Dr. Atta and Motherboard, but they're all versions of this thing called Otherboard. Like, what does that mean? And so it gets really mysterious and weird.
No, like, yeah, the book definitely it goes from like more action and stuff like that into like a heavier tone as it gets to the end, but I think it's great because you've already been pulled into this world, and then it just like had that extra layer gets added in.
Yeah, thank you. I thank you very much. That was kind of the gamble. I was really hoping and most people love the book, who read it. So I feel like most people dig it. But that was kind of the risk because like this is the only thing I've ever made where at least the first thing I ever made where people were sort of anticipating it. I had shown some drawings and told them, oh, it's gonna be like a video game manual. And so people were a little bit hyped. And I was like, oh man, actually hope I don't let them down. And I don't think it did, but this is like the really like, okay, it gets really weird. Basically Attaboy makes his choice and he sort of like really self-actualizes.
Mhm.
And instead of having a big fight with Otherboard, it's more like, no, I made my choice. I'm going to do this. And that's that. And so at on the last panel right there, the last page, Attaboy's eyes is a little bit of blue in his eyes again. And the color is returning because now kind of Attaboy's, he's decided what he wants to do. And that's kind of the big thing. And so boom, now Attaboy is humongous, Otherboard is small, and the Otherboard eventually becomes a little triangle pyramid. And Attaboy's kind of he's gonna make his choices for everybody. He's gonna give Motherboard another chance, give his father another chance in a different kind of way. And the big thing at the end is basically other board's like, do you want me to help your brother Scrapper? And Atta Boy's like, he's got to figure it out on his own, like everyone does. And that's kind of that. And then I once I didn't know this when I was writing the book until like maybe halfway through. I was like, it's gonna end with Scrapper. Scrapper's like the final piece. And Scrapper's just chilling. He's hanging out behind the level 1 sign and the sliding in the sky, and he's got this all these debris of Atta Boys, and he decides on his own way. He's tired of doing the same old thing. He wants to change and he wants to go out and and so the end of it is like start a new game, yes or no. And it's like that's kind of life. So that's like, I think a nice way to kind of go out.
Mm-hmm. And leaving it open ended too, like start new game. Yes, no. You didn't select either one. It's just it's
Right.
there. Yeah, it's a
Thank you.
very good way to end the book.
Yeah, exactly. And I was hoping people would pick that up. It's like, I'm not, there's no highlight yes or no. It's not about that. It's you make the choice.
Mm-hmm. And then the people that you're acknowledging the works of, I mean, look at those people. They're just
They're pretty
amazing.
good.
Yes.
And so, and the first thing like is for Jackson Barber. Jackson Barber is my best friend when I was a little kid, in like second, third grade. And I have no idea what happened to him. I was in Pennsylvania. I moved to Arizona. Never saw him again. I can't find him on social media. I just remember we used to like video games, and so it's funny. And that's where the name Jack Barber from Serious Creatures comes from. Is from Jackson Barber.
Very cool.
So I'm like, it'd be so cool if like he found this book someday, and he's like, oh my god, is this like little Tony from Pennsylvania? But yeah, so I figured I do that, and then I gave Taylor Hendel's my wife. I gave her some props. Jesse Lonigan, he's my dude, so I gave him some props too on top of everybody else. And then I gave to like all these different artists who mean something to this book in particular, and there's a whole list.
Yeah, no, I mean, look at that. Jack Kirby, Jeffrey Allen Love, the creators of Mega Man, Akira Kanamura, Keiji Inafune, I don't want to say it wrong, and then Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka, Matthew Allison of Kankor, and of course Michelle Fife, who I know is a huge influence on you.
Yeah, and Matthew Allison for Cancor, just that work really kind of showed me like using superhero iconography to kind of tell a personal story. Like I was like, oh, that was the direct influence on this, and so I had like I gotta give him something for that.
Oh yeah, he's phenomenal, dude. Like just talking about like alcoholism and shit in that
Yeah.
book, like that connected with me too, because like I've been sober for almost 11 years. So like
Oh,
reading that
awesome.
book and when I was able to talk to him, I was like, man, dude, like you hit so many like notes for me. Like, and I'm not saying that other people can't get that same experience, but for me, I was reading it on a different level, you know. So
Yeah, and exactly. I when I read his book, I was when I first bought it, I just thought the art looked awesome and looked kind of cool. But then I read it, I was like, oh, this is way more heartfelt than I was prepared for. And I loved it for that.
obviously you got your little author bio, the links,
Speak
all those links will be down below for everybody watching. Because I usually drop these on video because I mean, what's the point of dropping the audio
right.
if you can't look at the picture? But yeah, make sure you guys go pick up all this stuff um by Tony's every single one, Lumen, Serious Creatures, his novels, obviously Atta Boy, Grape Shot was a great fucking one off. Your Friday the 13th book that you did too. Yeah, dude, this was such a fun book. I'm so glad I was able to get, the original, the oversight. Well, like you said, people were anticipating it, so like I was ready when this book launched. It
Thank
was
you.
Kickstarter, right? We did Kickstarter for this one.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, yeah.
It worked out just great. And yeah, again, if someone has never read my books at all, like this is probably a good place to start. I think it's really solid. It's self-contained, 74 pages. It's all one and done.
But yeah, dude, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
me to talk the book. We'll definitely be doing some more with some of your other work too. I'm excited for that. And again, go pick up the book. Tony McMillen's links all down below. And yeah, dude, we'll do this again soon.
That's good. Thanks, man.